Summer might not officially start until next week, but I'm already off of work, so let's go ahead and talk about the Summer Vibes reading tag. Our tag today comes from Rhonda Holden. I will link her channel in the description, as well as provide a link to her video going over these tags. Before we get started, let me know down in the comments below, what are your summer reading plans and what are you excited about coming out in the next few months? I did my best to try to mix in a couple of new titles, a couple of older titles, a couple of graphic novels, just to make sure that we had even representation of a bunch of different things depending on your taste. Let's get into it. Starting with prompt number 1, Sunshine and Smiles. This is for a book that makes you happy or leaves you smiling. And for me, that's going to go to Edgedancer by Brandon Sanderson. Now, this is a novella set between, I believe, books 2 and 3 of the Stormlight Archive series. So it does require a bit of investment to understand the context here. But Lift, the protagonist of this series, is a young girl who just wants to stay young forever in a very grimdark world full of global conflict, which she doesn't seem to care about at all. And that's where a lot of the humor and the fun of this title really comes into play for me. I know that there is a group of readers out there who do not care for Lift as a character, who find her to be annoying and ridiculous, but I find it really funny to have this character who is doing all these outrageous things, doesn't care about propriety and these types, and the code that many of the other characters are following in this book series, and is a constant strain on her partner's nerves, her partner being the thing that she is bonded with in order to give her powers. An offbeat one, but when I was thinking about what book has really made me smile and laugh recently that I've read, this one stood out to me. I remember it being immensely entertaining and also a breezy read. We need breezy reads for summer. Caveat, you have to read through 2 1,500-page books before you get to this, so there is that. Prompt number 2 is Beach Read Bliss. This is for a light escapist read for the beach. For this, I'm going to go with a recent read with the Geomagicians. I mentioned in my overview for last month that the Geomagicians was one that read very quickly, despite being about a 500-page novel, and is one that I could see myself reading on the beach, relaxing. I did take this on a vacation of sorts. We were in another town for one of our friends' kids' birthdays. And I did bring this with me, read it down in the lobby. So not quite the beach, but I definitely would take this on vacation and read it. Maybe that's why it was stuck in my mind as a good one for that type of trip. This is the story of Mary Anning, who was a real-life paleontologist, but in this world, paleontologists are geomagicians. Magic is derived from skeletons and fossils. And so when she finds a pterodactyl egg and it suddenly hatches in her hands, it kind of throws everything people know about the way the world works into chaos and makes it to where she is now the center of a lot of attention. This has a lot of political machinations going through it. It has a romance of sorts. It's kind of rekindling an old flame, maybe a little bit of that in there. But at its core, it's just a fun story about paleontologist magicians in a world that closely resembles our own, to the point we're bringing in real actual historical paleontologists and quite a bit of their actual real life lives into it. So it's a fascinating read, a really fun one. And if you are someone who is a dinosaur kid like I was, you will definitely get enjoyment out of this one. Prompt number 3 is Scorching Hot Romance, which I would hope would be self-explanatory. If you are a longtime viewer of this channel, you know there's only one romance series that I really stand here, and that is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairy series, with Emily Wilde and Wendell Bambleby as our couple Now, this is not something that I would describe as a scorching hot romance. I would describe it as a slow burn between a socially awkward person and a very outgoing person, but it's one that I really enjoyed watching the progression of over the course of the series, to see the ways in which they help each other grow. The Emily Wilde series is about the titular character, who is a fairy researcher, and her various exploits across England and in Europe. It stars a introverted academic, which I myself am kind of an introverted academic. So enjoyed that about it. The relationship between these two is one of the highlights of the series, and the way that it goes fairly slowly over the course of the trilogy, as they grow closer and closer and start to see how each of them brings something to the relationship that the other needs. I thought it was really lovely, and the series is amazing. If you have not had a chance to check it out yet, I would highly recommend it. Prompt number 4 is Summer Storms, a book featuring emotional turbulence and twists. For this one, I am going to go with a manga series, Alice in Borderland. Alice in Borderland is one of the subset of one of my favorite genres coming out of Japan, which is this like high stakes gambling or gamification, something akin to Squid Game. Here we have our main character Arasu, who does go through the emotional ringer in this series. I don't want to say too much because it is a major spoiler for an event that happens fairly early on in the series, but is paramount to the emotional underpinning of the story as a whole. There is also, as is the nature for these high-stakes games manga, many twists and reveals as the games go on. Usually there'll be a period where they introduce the game, a period where the players will play the game and try to figure it out, and then this final reveal of like what is a clever way to manipulate people or a clever way to end the game. I find that narrative loop very satisfying. Several of these types of mangas have really sucked me into the world and got me really invested. Not a huge series, not a short series, but not a huge series, and one that I do feel mostly sticks the landing. I'm sure there are those who are dissatisfied with the ending, but I feel like it did what it set out to do. It has that emotional turmoil, not just as a facet of the story, but as its central emotional core. Number 5 is Slip and Slide Plot, a book with a bunch of twists. While there are a number of contemporary mystery and suspense novels I could probably list on here, I find that in most cases reading those types of books, I get frustrated at the number of twists at the end, and I wanted to pick something that I genuinely enjoyed. So I'm going to talk again about Nights, because Nights is bizarre and crazy and has so many weird twists and unexpected moments. This is one of the few books I can think of where I turned the page and was genuinely shocked at what was happening. Not only does Nights have a significant number of these twists and turns, but the narrative itself remains so ambiguous that there is a lot of mystery baked into just following the core story. It's difficult to describe what's even happening in Nights at a base level, but essentially a vampire, a demon-possessed person, maybe, I'm not quite sure what that thing is, a ghost, and a regular person all kind of room with each other, and bizarre stuff happens as a result. There are parts in here that are just like complete non sequiturs, and you have to wonder, what are the larger implications? This is a world that is parallel to our own, but clearly has very obvious divergences and differences. There's a point where a star-nosed mole that one of the characters comes across in the woods just starts talking to him, and does that mean all animals talk? I don't think so, but he certainly doesn't seem that upset by it, and no one comments on it. That's not like the thrust of their conversation. It's about something completely different. They just kind of go with it, and you just kind of have to go with it. That's the summary of Knights. You just kind of have to go with it. If you've ever seen the anime for Fooly Cooly, that is really the best way to describe the vibe going on here, because in a similar vein to what's happening in Knights, Fooly Cooly did not explain half of the stuff that was happening at any given time, and you had to watch it many, many times in order to catch all the little details and try to figure out what actually happened at the end of that story. That's what Knights is. It's like Fooly Cooly and Buffy had a baby, and it's awesome, and you should check it out. Also, it's in at least 4 languages that I can think of off the top of my head. So there's that. Prompt number 6 is Road Trip Ready. This is for a book featuring travel, adventure, or a literal road trip. For that, I have Brigands and Bread Knives, which does have a literal road trip. This is basically D&D, but our plot is a road trip with a stowaway. This is the 3rd book in the Legends and Lattes series. I don't believe you actually need to read the previous 2 in order to understand what's happening in the story, although some of the things that are bookending the plot might be a little bit more confusing because it does use characters from the previous books. Basically, a ratkin, a mouse person who up to this point had been managing a bookstore, decides that their life is not as interesting as they would like it to be. They're looking for more excitement, and they just happen to accidentally get into the wagon of one of the world's most famous adventurers, and they go to all sorts of crazy D&D-esque locations, including one of my favorites, which is a cult dedicated to a extra planar entity that is set on destroying the world, that everybody thinks is evil. Like, everyone thinks this cult is evil, but the cult is actually worshiping him, because so long as he's sated with worship, he won't come and destroy the world. So they're actually saving the world. It flips that whole narrative on its head. And are they telling the truth? Are they really crazy? Are they really evil? We don't know for sure, but I thought it was definitely an amusing concept to include in the story. There's also a kleptomaniac goblin in here that is joining them for the ride, so there's that as well. It's got a lot of chaotic energy, a lot of fun, and is a literal road trip across a D&D landscape. Prompt number 7 is Campfire Tales, spooky, mysterious, or eerie vibes. Which gives me another opportunity to talk about Japanese Gothic. This is one of the most recent books I've read lately, but has an amazing atmosphere, and as long as you can stay with the plot, one of the most captivating conclusions to a horror book that I've read in a while. Now, this is a Gothic story, so you should expect kind of a slow pace. However, it is intertwined with an actual Japanese folk story of Urashima Taro, and that is relevant. I figured it was going to be, but it was really hard to tell exactly how until I got to the end of the book, which I think is a hallmark of not only good writing, but captivating writing, right? It kept me interested to the very end to figure out, why are we talking about the Legend of Urashima Taro? Why is that our separation between the different parts of this book? The primary story here follows 2 characters, one of whom has possibly just murdered his roommate, although he can't actually remember doing that. So we have almost immediately this unreliable narrator. He can't even trust his own brain. He can't even trust his own mind. How are we supposed to be able to trust him? We have the daughter of a disgraced samurai who is going through his brutalistic training. We have a lot to say about abuse and how those who are abused will often grab on and idolize their abusers. They kind of drift into each other's worlds as ghosts. They each see each other as kind of a spirit entity, and they're trying to figure out what's going on with this house, what's going on with why are we seeing each other, how are we connected, and the exploration of that connection is what drives the plot here. Excellent if you are a fan of horror, excellent if you're a fan of Japanese culture. A horror story that had me turning its pages to the very end. Prompt number 8 is Sand Between the Pages. This is for a book with a coastal or island setting. Of course, I've got to go with The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi, which takes place by the water, by a beach on the coast, by virtue of mostly being about pirates. Amina al-Sarafi, a retired pirate who comes back in for one last job, get her crew back together and fight a demon and all these dark forces. The world is full of magic and mysticism, action on the high seas. Very fun read. One that I would highly recommend, and has a sequel out now that I have not yet picked up. It moves very breezily from beat to beat without any part of the story feeling like it's dragging or lingering too long. The end is something that might be argued as a little deus ex machina. It does establish the setup for the subsequent books, and so I forgive it because I want more of this series, and I had so much fun watching this crew get back together. I want to see their next exploits on the high seas and read more of their swashbuckling adventures. Prompt number 9 is Sunburn Alert. This is for a book that is making you feel burned, either disappointing or not reaching your expectations. For that, I have The Last Contract of Isako. I've watched a couple of reviews on this now, and I've been able to sit with it for a little bit longer. I still don't like it, but I do feel like part of the problem is with the marketing of the book. Things like John Wick in space were mentioned, which is not true. This is not, I mean, there are action scenes in it, but this is not the kind of high octane action thrill ride you would get from a summer blockbuster. It's more of a plotting, methodical read as far as how the plot is progressing. And I just can't get past the ending. I feel like the plot goes nowhere, and that is a very big thing for me as a reader. I need some point of reading your 500-page book. I would suggest looking at reviews. I would suggest looking at reactions and some kind of feedback from someone who's looked at it before you pick this one up, because I do think that there is a disconnect between the way the publishers are talking about this book and the way that readers are talking about this book. It was not for me, and I'm very upset because this was one of the ones I was most excited for based on its description and what I had heard before picking it up. Last is prompt number 10, Endless Summer, a book that you wish didn't end. For that, I'm going to go with the Locked Tomb series, or if I have to pick a single book, then the absolutely crazy Harrow the Ninth. I would read about these sapphic space necromancers forever if I could. And I'm so glad that Tamsin Muir decided to write a 4th book before writing the last one. My understanding is that Alecto the Ninth was supposed to be the 3rd book and then the final book in a trilogy, and then Muir was like, but actually I could write a whole other book in between those if we wanted, and everyone was like, yeah. I feel like this is a difficult series to get into, especially book 2, which is this one I have in my hand right here, because of how esoteric the plot can become and how it blends this very serious space opera feeling, these very complex relationships that are constantly shifting and alliances are changing from book to book. Compare that with some genuinely laugh out loud humor, which is sometimes crass and sometimes just really bizarre and like 90s flavored for some reason. I wish Everything I Loved wasn't so hard to explain. This is a series that I don't care if it ends up being 5 books or 10 books. I know Alecto the Ninth is supposed to be the last one. We'll see. But I would gladly read as much as Muir is willing to write for this series. It is among my absolute favorites and is something that you should definitely check out, especially if you are a fan of weird and challenging literature. And that's going to do it for our book tag today. It's been a while since I've done a book tag, so I'm going to keep the tags light. I will tag Vin over at Vin's Reading Corner because we just got back into communication. I hope he's getting back into the swing of YouTube. Also tag Emily over at the Astral Library. I really enjoy watching her reading sprints on Tuesday nights. Link to both of those channels will be in the description below if you want to check them out. And of course, if you have a BookTube channel and you would like to keep this tag going, absolutely make a video, tag me, let me know so I can check out what other people are reading over the summer months. As always, I hope your reading journey is going well. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so we can grow this corner of our BookTube community. And until the next one, take care. Rawr, I'm a dinosaur kid.